Hey, what's going on everyone? It's me, the weather up there, and welcome to part 2 of the Ocarina of Time No Ace GIM Route tutorial series. In part 1, we covered the Enter Deku segment all the way from Link's house to the Deku Tree, and in part 2, we'll be covering the Get Item Manipulation segment in full, including the new Quick Putaway web burn strat found by Exodus in March of 2020. Now I'm going to break down Get Item Manipulation into 3 main parts. The first is to remove the web on the first floor so that we can access the rest of the dungeon. The second is to get Link into a state that we call Get Item Delay, which I'll go over in just a minute. And the third is to use that state to manipulate what's called a Get Item Value, so that instead of receiving something like Deku Nuts, we instead receive a bottle with blue potion in it that we're going to be using for the wrong warp later on in the run. Now, Get Item Manipulation can often be pretty intimidating, particularly for newer speedrunners. So I want to start off by explaining what makes GIM actually work in the first place, and then I want to go over something that we call pause buffering. Now, pause buffering is a technique used in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask speedrunning that allows us to advance the game frame by frame, which makes performing frame-perfect tricks, such as GIM, much more consistent. Now, if you want to skip the whole intro and get straight to the tutorial, I'm going to include the timestamp to that part of the video right here. You can just go to that part of the video and get straight to the how-to. Now let's get started on how GIM actually works. In order to understand how Get Item Manipulation works, the first thing we're going to have to know about is what's called a Get Item event. This refers to the small cutscene or animation that plays every time Link gets a new item in the game. One important distinction about Get Item events is that if Link picks up a new item while diving, the cutscene plays after Link resurfaces, not while he's still underwater. Think about when Link picks up Ruto's letter in Lake Hylia, or the Ocarina of Time in the moat outside of Hyrule Castle. In both of these scenarios, once you touch the new item, the game takes control of Link and forces him to resurface. Only once the game detects that you've come back up from underwater does the Get Item cutscene play and you receive the new item. It's important to note that when collecting a new item, that item isn't actually added to the inventory until the Get Item cutscene plays. This state of waiting for Link to resurface to get the new item is a form of what we call Get Item Delay. Whenever Link receives a new item, the game checks for what's called the Get Item Value to determine what item Link actually receives. This value can either be positive for items that you receive by simply picking them up, or negative, which indicates that you need to open a chest first to receive the item. Upon hitting A to open the chest, that value is then flipped to positive, and you receive the item just as normal. When Link picks up a new item in a state of item delay, that Get Item Value is loaded and ready for Link to resurface in order to give you the item. Get Item Manipulation works by getting Link into a state of item delay where we're still able to control Link and move him around on land. From here, if we simply stand in front of a chest, that Get Item Value is then changed from the normal item that the game is waiting to give us to the negated value that normally loads when you stand in front of a chest, waiting for you to open it. However, instead of hitting A to open the chest, which would then flip that value back to positive and give us a normal item, we instead jump into the water, which ends the item delay and gives us the item related to the negative value instead. This negative Get Item Value looks for an item out of the normal bounds of the Get Item table. This allows us to manipulate what item the game will give us depending on which chest we stand in front of. In the Deku Tree, for example, there are 2 chests located by a body of water. One contains the dungeon map and the other contains a heart. If we stand in front of the heart chest in a state of item delay and then jump in the water, as soon as we resurface, the Get Item cutscene will play right away, and we'll receive the item related to the negative value of a heart. In this case, we will receive light arrows immediately upon resurfacing from the water. If instead we touch the dungeon map chest on the second floor and then jump in the water, we instead receive the negative value of the map. In this case, we would receive a bottle with blue potion in it immediately upon resurfacing from the water. Generally, the most difficult part of Get Item Manipulation is not the manipulation itself, where you simply have to touch a chest, but rather getting Link into a state of item delay where we can still control him and move him around on land. There's actually a lot of different setups in order to get Link into this state, but in the Deku Tree, the fastest way to do this is to clip out of bounds and then grab a set of vines while diving. This tricks the game into thinking we're still underwater while we're able to climb out of the water, move around on land, and pick up new items. In this case, the item we'll be trying to pick up is Deku Nuts, so we have to be sure that we haven't picked up Deku Nuts prior to this point. Otherwise, the Get Item event won't activate when we pick them up, because we're not picking them up for the first time in the game. Once we collect the Deku Nuts while in the state of item delay, we simply have to climb up to the dungeon map chest on the second floor, jump into the water, and we'll receive the bottle with blue potion upon resurfacing. Alright, so now that you know how get item manipulation actually works, the last thing I want to go over is a technique that we call pause buffering. Now, as I mentioned earlier, pause buffering is a technique used in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask speedrunning to advance the game frame by frame, just like this, right? It's used to improve consistency on frame-perfect tricks, such as what I'm doing right now, which I'll get into in just a second, where you pause, unpause, and pause again after one frame. And what it allows you to do is advance the game to the specific frame that you need for the trick to work, which is this frame for this trick. And then on that next unpause, if you hit the inputs that you need as these menus are fading out, which is called unpause lag, you'll be able to put the input through on the exact frame that you want to do it on. So if this is the frame I need to hit A on, what I'm going to do is unpause, and then as these menus are going away, I'm going to hit A. And that's going to allow the trick to work. Now I'll get into that actual trick in just a second, but pause buffering does take practice, and if you pause too quickly, you're not going to advance the game at all, right? You're just going to pause in the same frame over and over. So you can't just mash the pause button. You're going to have to time it. There's a specific rhythm to it. If you unpause for too long, you're going to advance the game by more than one frame, which is useful if you pause, much earlier than you need to, but it can be risky because you might accidentally pass over the frame that you need to, do the specific inputs on, right? So take time, work on pause buffering, and it's really going to help with your consistency in the long run. Now, I would recommend pause buffering most single frame inputs and a good amount of, multi-frame inputs, things like that. There's specific tricks that you don't want to pause buffer, and it depends on how much time it's going to save. So bridge clip is one of these. So bridge clip only saves 2 seconds over skipping the bridge rupee entirely and just going over the 2 sets of stepping stones. And each individual pause takes roughly 2 seconds. So you would not want to buffer a bridge clip, for example, because if you buffer it, even if you pause on the perfect frame and do the inputs correctly, you'll cancel out any time save you would have had by getting bridge clip. But other tricks such as get item manipulation, you should be pause buffering just for consistency's sake, because you're gonna save much more time slowly pause buffering get item manipulation than failing it trying to go for it unbuffered, 2 or 3 times, right? And that's true with most tricks in this run. If you can pause buffer frame perfectly, or you can do, a 2 pause buffer for a trick, you're going to lose about 4 seconds. And that 4 seconds is going to be much easier saved with better movement throughout the run than simply trying to risk it all for an unbuffered input, Now, hopefully that made some sense. Now let's get into the tutorial. Alright, so now in order to understand the web burn, there's 3 things we got to know about. The first is what's called a power crouch stab. Now in this game, when you do a crouch stab, which is done by holding shield and then hitting B, like this attack was never assigned an actual damage value. What it does is it takes your most recent sword type attack, whether that's a jump slash or a regular sword slash like this, and it applies that damage source to your crouch stab. So what this means is if I go up to this Deku Baba, it takes 2 hits to kill it if my most recent attack was just a regular sword slash. On the other hand, if I do a jump slash, that multiplies it by 2, this does 2 damage. If now I do a crouch stab, it kills it in 1 hit. So that's a power crouch stab. The next thing you have to know about is the Putaway animation. Now right now you notice on the A button on screen, the blue button, it says Putaway. If I hit A, Link will put away whatever item he's holding, or even Navi the fairy if she's out. And Link will do an animation of, you know, putting that item away, right? It's important to know that if you're running around, it will say attack. And if you hit it, he'll either roll, or if you're targeting, he'll do a jump slash, something like that. So it takes about a second or so while you're standing still for put away to show up as an option. However, if you're also moving slower like this, it will stay on screen. So you don't have to be dead still. As long as you're moving really slowly, it will count. Keep in mind, if you're moving really slowly and you accidentally go a little bit too fast, it goes away, and you have to wait a full second before it shows up again. Maybe not a full second, but you know, you have to wait a little longer. The last thing we have to know about is a trick called broken stick. So normally in the game, if you break your stick against like a wall or another enemy or something like that, Link will go, you know, do the attack, and then there's a quick animation of him actually breaking the stick, holding it, and then dropping it or putting it away and losing it, essentially. Now, broken stick is done by being a certain distance from a wall. It can be done with a setup for consistency if you'd like, and essentially Link will keep holding half of that stick, and you're able to keep using it, right? Which is normally not the case. So this is the broken stick setup. Now, the web burn involves all three of these things, and I'll show you what I mean. Alright, so the first part of the web burn is called quick putaway. Now, quick putaway is done by canceling this animation of putting a Deku stick away like that, and there's a few different ways to do it. We're going to be doing it by taking damage from this Deku Baba over here at the same time that the animation of putting the stick away would normally start. So we're going to do that by getting into the range of the Deku Baba's attack, and then hitting A to put the stick away 2 frames before we would normally take damage, which is right here. So I hit A, and then 2 frames later the animation of putting the stick away would normally start. However, instead, we take damage from this Deku Baba. Now what that's going to do is the animation of taking damage will take priority of the other animation, and that's how we cancel it. So even though I hit A, Link is still holding the stick. And this puts us into a state called quick putaway. Now if you remember from before, when we would normally break a Deku stick, there's a quick animation of Link holding this broken Deku stick before he puts it away or drops it or loses it or whatever. But now in quick putaway, if we were to break this Deku stick, instead of doing that animation, the stick is simply going to disappear out of Link's hands. I don't know if you noticed that, but there is no sound or anything like that of Link putting that stick away. By comparison, here's what would happen normally. Link holds the broken stick for a few frames, and then you hear him put it away. Now the next part of the setup is broken stick. Now the broken stick setup uses a jump slash, and normally in Ocarina of Time, a jump slash has 2 separate hitboxes. One hitbox is active while Link is in the air, and then there's a frame of no hitboxes, and then a separate hitbox occurs while Link is on the ground. And this is important. So when we do a broken stick setup, just like this, Link first breaks his stick while in midair, right there. He goes through the wall there, which is kind of funny. And then the second hitbox occurs again while Link is on the ground, and you're going to hear it right there. And what this does is it cancels that, broken stick animation, and Link is stuck with this half of a broken stick in his hands, like this, and we can still use it. Alright, so once we get quick put away by putting the stick away 2 frames before we take damage, right here, it's going to cancel that animation. The next part is to do a broken stick setup. Now the combination of quick put away and broken stick has some pretty funny effects. So if you remember from before, when we break a stick with quick put away active, the stick is going to disappear out of Link's hands. Now, when we do the broken stick setup, the first hitbox of this jump slash is going to break the stick right there. Now the second hitbox that normally occurs while Link is on the ground right here no longer activates because Link has nothing in his hands anymore. And this has some very strange effects. When the game calculates damage values, it looks at a table of damage values, similar to how there's a table of items. There's a table of damage values, and each number on one side correlates to a damage value on the other side. And that damage value has, it's a 8-digit number, right, normally, and normally only one of those digits has been changed from a 0. And so, you know, each weapon in the game relates to one number that relates to a damage value. But when we do a jump slash with nothing in hand, which is normally not possible in the game, it looks out of the bounds of the normal table, similar to how we do get item manipulation. And so what this does is it looks to one number, and then it looks to a damage value. And because we're out of the bounds of the normal table, that data does not correspond to the normal rules of only having one number active. And instead, every single bit has been changed. And that gives us a really bizarre glitched damage value. Now, this number has the effects of 14 different damage values in the game. This includes the Big Goron Jump Slash, includes Boomerang, Deku Sticks, Deku Nuts, and most importantly for our case, it includes Din's Fire. And so once we do that Jump Slash, if we then do a Power Crouch Stab, which if you remember from earlier, that Crouch Stab will use our most recent sword type attack for its damage source, which in this case was a Jump Slash with nothing in hand. When we do a Power Crouch Stab, we're able to use Din's Fire on the web in order to burn it. Now that's how the web burn works, and now I'm going to go over a couple different setups that we can use to do this pretty quickly. Alright, so the first part of the web burn, again, is quick put away. Now that's putting the Deku Stick away and canceling the animation by taking damage from this Deku Baba. So there's a few different setups we can use for this. The first, and the one I'll recommend for most runners, is going to be Second Cycle. Now the cycles refer to each individual attack from this Deku Baba, and each attack is one cycle. So for Second Cycle, we're essentially waiting for that second attack. And so just like with every setup I'll show you, the first step is going to be to equip our Deku Sticks, and then take a Deku Stick out as we run towards this Deku Baba. Now for Second Cycle, we want to make sure we're not too close so that we don't get hit on this first attack. And then after the first attack, we're going to slowly walk up into position. Make sure you don't go too fast, because if you move too fast, put away as an option over the A button will change to attack, and we're not going to be able to put the Deku Stick away at the right time. So we're lining up with Link's feet sort of right at the front of this light green splotch on the ground. I'll highlight it so you can see it in video. And now we're going to be pause buffering till the second frame that the Deku Baba is lunging at us. If we have our position right, the second frame of the Deku Baba lunging at us will be 2 frames before we take damage, which is the timing we want to do for the A press. Keep in mind, if we're too close to the Deku Baba, we're going to have to hit A sooner, and if we're too far away from the Deku Baba, we're going to have to hit A later. And that's just because the Deku Baba is going to hit Link sooner or later based on how close you are, right? So just make sure your position here is consistent. So if our position is right, we're going to pause buffer until this frame. This is the second frame that the Deku Baba is lunging at Link. And you can sort of either count each individual frame that the Deku Baba is lunging, or you can use a visual cue such as how wide the Deku Baba's mouth is open, something like that. That's generally what I use, but again, use whatever works for you. Now on this frame, what we're going to do is during unpause lag, which is when the menus are essentially fading off screen, we're going to hit A, and that's going to trigger the put away animation, and 2 frames later we're going to take damage from the Deku Baba, which is going to cancel the animation altogether. And it's going to work like this. And just like that. That's the second cycle quick put away. To troubleshoot quick put away, if you notice that Link puts the stick away after taking damage from the Deku Baba, this means that you hit A too late, or you were too close to the Deku Baba and the Deku Baba hit you sooner than you were expecting it to. On the other hand, if you notice that the Deku Stick disappears out of Link's hands as you take damage from the Deku Baba, this means that you hit A too early, or you were too far away from the Deku Baba and it hit you later than expected. Alright, so in full speed, second cycle looks like this. You wait for the first cycle, you walk into position, and then we're going to pause buffer for the second frame that the Deku Baba is lunging at us. That's the first frame. That's the second frame. And then we hit A. Alright, so next up is save state setup. So this is named after the runner Savestate, who came up with it shortly after quick put away was found. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to line up with the Deku Baba slightly over Link's left shoulder, just like this, just like the other setup, which is really only done to help speed up the process of getting Broken Stick later on, so don't stress about it too much just yet. The next part is going to be to get into a similar position as we did with second cycle with Link's feet on that sort of light green texture. But instead of waiting for that first attack to finish before we get there, we're going to get there and then roll into that first attack. Now, as Link rolls in this game, he has what's called invincibility frames. All this means is that Link can't take damage during these frames, and it's programmed into the game. You're supposed to be able to avoid damage by rolling most of the time. So what we're going to do is get into position and then hesitate just a little bit and then tap up an A, which is going to make Link roll. The next part is going to be to hold slightly up on the control stick. If we hold too far up, Link is going to move too quickly, and Putaway as an option over the A button is going to change to attack, meaning that we won't be able to put the Deku Stick away in time to take damage from the Deku Baba, and the trick won't work. So make sure you're not holding too far up on the control stick. So essentially it's going to look something like this. Notice that we, 1, avoided damage from the Deku Baba, and 2, as I held slightly up on the control stick, what that did is it prevented Link from getting knocked back by the Deku Baba. What this means is that Link is within the range of the Deku Baba's attacks, and it's going to trigger an instant second cycle. From here, we're just going to wait to hit A. So it attacked us once, and it immediately starts a second cycle attack. With Savestate setup, the frame to hit A on is going to be slightly sooner than we did before. It's going to be the first frame that the Deku Baba opens its mouth. Right there. It's very subtle, but the Deku Baba barely starts opening its mouth before it lunges at us. And this is the frame that we're going to hit A on. It should look like this. Just like that. And keep in mind, if you don't move in time to do Broken Stick, you'll take more damage, which you don't want to do. But that's Savestate setup. It's a little more involved, but with practice, you should be able to do it in full speed. And it's going to look something like this. Just like that. And from there we can burn the web. Alright, so last up is first cycle. Currently, first cycle is really not deemed viable in runs, but I wanted to show you how to do it because who knows, maybe one day you'll be the person fighting for that 1639, and this is how you get that last second out of your run. It works. The reason this is so difficult is just because of the timing of the Deku Baba's attack and the timing of how long it takes for Putaway to show up as an option on the A button. In order for us to get into position in the same time as the Deku Baba attacks us, we have to play perfectly for Putaway to be an option. Even if we play perfectly, Putaway is only really an option for like 2 frames before we have to hit A. So I'm going to see if I can make this work just by using the frame advance feature on the practice ROM, but I don't even know if this will work. So I'm going to slowly walk into position. The Deku Baba is spawned. We'll see. Ah, that was close. That was close. This is dumb. That's first cycle for you. Okay. Alright, so once we've got Quick Putaway active, the next part of the trick is to do Broken Stick. Now, if you remember from before, there's a couple different ways Link can break a stick in the game. There's the normal way where, Link will break a stick, do a quick animation of holding it before he drops it. And then there's Broken Stick, where Link will break a stick and then keep holding half of that broken stick and, being able to use it and stuff like that. For the web burn to work, we need to do the latter. So there's a couple different setups for Broken Stick, whether we want the utmost consistency or whether we're trying to squeeze, a little bit more time out of the run. And And I'll show you how they work. So the first I'll show you is called the corner setup, which is the most consistent. So once we get quick put away, this is the second cycle setup. So I hit A on this frame. Once we get quick put away, for corner setup, we're going to come into this back wall here. You can sort of see how there's two different angles here. I brightened up the capture card, so hopefully you can see a little clearer. You can sort of see how there's two different walls. We're going to come against this back wall and target it by just simply either walking into it or facing it and then hitting target. And then we're just simply going to turn to the right, target once again, and hit A to do a jump slash. Now, if we did quick put away correctly, when we do that broken stick setup, the stick will disappear out of Link's hands. There's not going to be an animation of Link holding it and then dropping it. And we're also not going to end up with a broken stick. Because we did quick put away, as soon as the stick breaks, it will disappear out of Link's hands. And that's what we're looking for. Once we break the stick, we're just going to roll over to the web, hold shield and hit B to do a crouch stab, and the web should burn. So that's corner setup. It's the most consistent. It's pretty hard to screw it up, to be honest. There are a couple things that can happen. First of all, if we don't target this wall correctly, like this, when we turn to the right, there's a chance we might break the stick fully, or the normal way, because we'll have a weird angle against that wall. So make sure, one, that you target this wall, you're flat against the wall. Another thing that can happen is, maybe you don't turn to the right entirely, or you target the Deku Baba. So just make sure, you turn correctly. And then another thing that can happen is if you're too far away from that wall, when you do the jump slash to break the stick, you're going to be at a weird position and you are going to break the stick fully. You notice there Link did that animation of holding it and then dropping the stick. So if you target the wall too far to the left, just make sure you move forward like this before you end up doing that jump slash. And that's going to prevent that issue. So you can either move forward or just make sure you target this wall as close to that corner as you can, hence the name corner setup. Alright, so next up is instant broken stick. Now, for instant setup to work, what you have to do is line up with the Deku Baba over Link's left, just like this. I was mentioning it earlier, and it was primarily for instant setup to work. So what this is going to do is it's going to give Link a good position where you can simply flick down, target, and jump slash against the wall behind you to get broken stick. So for second cycle, it will work most of the time, but you might have to shuffle a little bit to the left. So you turn around. See, you can kind of notice Link is like right on that corner. Sometimes he's a little bit too far to the right, and obviously it'll just miss. So sometimes you might just have to shuffle to the right a little bit, or to the left rather, a little bit before you jump slash. But sometimes it'll work. So if you're going for a second cycle, it's best to be consistent with instant cycle or instant broken stick. Shuffle a little bit to the left, and then jump slash. So in full speed, instant broken stick will look like this with the second cycle. So we get into position. I'll just use frame advance instead of pause buffer. And just like that. And then you roll over to the web, crouch stab, and then roll into that corner for the rest of get item manipulation. Alright, with save state setup, instant broken stick should work almost every time by just simply flicking down and jump slashing, so long as you line up with the Deku Baba far enough over Link's left. So with save state setup, you simply hit A on this frame, just like we were talking about earlier. And then from here, you just flick down. I just moved out of the way of the Deku Baba. You just simply flick down, target, and jump slash. And it should work almost every time. Alright, in full speed, save state setup with instant broken stick should look like this. And then you make your way to that corner. So it's really quick. It's not 100% consistent, but it's not too bad as long as you practice it. Alright, so once we've burned the web, the next part of the trick is to get into position for the vine clip. So we're going to burn the web, and then we're going to run into this corner back here, and we want to target this back wall right here. Once we've targeted the wall, we're going to do one side hop to the left, which is going to get Link into this corner. I do see some runners doing like 2 or more side hops, I guess to make sure Link is in the corner. But you don't need to do that unless you're further to the right than that sort of like light green dot behind Link's head there. So if you end up targeting over here, then yeah, you'll need to do 2 side hops to get there. But I would just recommend trying to target more towards the middle of this wall. That way you don't have to worry about it. So you're just going to do 1 side hop, and then you're going to untarget and hit B. That's going to make Link do a horizontal sword slash. If you don't untarget, Link will do a vertical slash like that, and you end up in like a slightly different position, which will make the trick not work. So we're going to target the wall, 1 side hop, untarget and hit B, and then we're going to wait for that horizontal slash animation to finish. If we don't wait for that animation to finish, Link is going to stop moving backwards prematurely, and again, we're going to end up in a slightly different position, and the setup won't work. So hit B, wait for the animation to finish, and then retarget. The last thing we're going to do before we do the vine clip is we need to do 4 side hops to the right. These side hops, we got to make sure that Link isn't taking any extra steps like that in between them. Otherwise, once again, we're going to be in a different position and the setup won't work. So one way that we can prevent that is by tapping right in A, rather than holding right and hitting A, which is going to make sure that as he lands, Link isn't going to be moving at all. So tapping a direction while you hit A is going to help. One last thing you can do for a little extra peace of mind is you can also hold shield during these side hops. Holding shield prevents Link from moving for an extra frame or so. And you don't need to do it, but it doesn't hurt. It gives you a little extra peace of mind. And once you grab the vines, you're going to untarget, go down 1, and then over to the left 1. So this is the final position we want before we drop off. And so we're going to tap target, which will lock the camera angle against the vines. And it helps prevent this weird camera oddity that I'll explain in a second. But you're going to lock your camera angle, and then you're going to hit A. So this is going to make Link drop off the vines. And the last thing we're going to be doing is pause buffering for the correct frame to hold up for the vine clip. So we're going to be pause buffering until the 2nd frame that we can see water. So this is the 1st frame. So we need to go 1 more. Right there. So this is the 2nd frame of water. As you can see, it's sort of like this, hexagonal shape on the bottom of the screen. Another visual cue you can use rather than, 2nd frame of water is there's a small bush that you can see on the platform down below. And the 1st frame you can see that bush is the correct frame to hold up on. So whichever visual cue you use, this is the frame you're looking for. And you're just going to hold up and then unpause. If you did this correctly, what Link is going to do is Link will grab these vines, and then he's going to be grabbing these vines behind this golden scuttle on the wall here. So what this does is Link is going to end up getting hit from behind, just like that. And so on 1 frame of gameplay, he's on this side of the vines, and on the very next frame, he's on the other side. So this is how clipping works. Essentially, because we're going through something in the matter of 1 frame, the game has no time to detect that Link is touching the wall, essentially. So this is how clipping works throughout the game. We just move fast enough so that in 1 frame we can be on one side of something, the next we're on the other, right? So that's the clip, and the last part is to simply tap target after we've clipped through the wall, but before we land in the water. It's pretty lenient, so you don't have to stress too much about it. So we're just simply going to tap target. What that does is as soon as Link lands in the water, the camera is going to rotate around and refocus behind Link. All right, so troubleshooting this vine clip can be a little tricky, at least when you're first learning. I know I had a lot of trouble learning this at first. It took me like over an hour to really understand like what I was doing wrong or why things weren't working. And it's normal. Don't stress about it. Here to help. So, a couple things that can go wrong. I think the most common mistake is taking a step during the 4 side hops to the right. So let's say if we take a step during these 4 side hops, what's going to happen is when I drop off the vines, if I pause buffer to the same frame, that should work, the 2nd frame of water, or the 1st frame, you can see that bush down at the bottom right. If I hold up on this frame, what's going to happen is Link is going to clip out of bounds and then clip back in bounds and land on this little platform here. This happened to me all the time. All it means is that you took a step during those 4 side hops and your position got a little skewed. So that's one very common error. All right, so another pretty common error is going to be targeting too soon after this horizontal slash. So if I target too soon and then I do the 4 side hops, even if I'm being really careful about these side hops, he didn't even grab the vines. Let's say he does grab the vines. We're going to end up too far to the right this time. And what's going to happen now is on the 2nd frame of water, if I hold up, he's going to clip out of bounds, but he's going to miss the water and just keep falling until he voids out. Which takes a while, but yeah. That's another pretty common mistake. It's always shocking when it happens, but it will happen. All right, and then a couple more things you want to look out for is, let's say we did the whole setup correctly on the 1st floor, and then when we drop down, this is pretty easy to diagnose, to be honest. If you hold up too soon, so let's say if we hold up on this frame, which is the 1st frame we can see water, Link is just going to grab these vines without clipping. That just simply means you held up too soon. Another thing that can happen is just the opposite. If we hold up too late, this is the 3rd frame that we see water, or the 2nd frame we can see that bush on the bottom right. If we hold up on this frame, we're going to get hit by the golden Skulltula and get knocked backwards instead of forwards and through the vines. So if we grab the vines, we were too early on the up input, and if we get knocked off the vines, then we were too late on the up input. All right, so there's one last strange anomaly that can happen where sometimes you'll drop off the vines and you'll pause buffer to the correct frame. 2nd frame you see water, but Link still grabs the vines for some reason. So we don't understand it fully. Just be aware of it. Sometimes it will happen. The furthest we've come is that it has something to do with when we untarget and when we hit A. I've found that it happens most often if I hit A 2 frames after I untarget. But it also seems that simply untargeting and tapping target before you drop off seems to fix this issue. So make sure you're doing that to avoid this. This is that strange camera anomaly I was talking about earlier. But furthest we've come is that it has something to do with when we sort of target here after the sword slash, as well as when we untarget and hit A there. So we don't really know exactly why it happens, but just be aware of it. Just be aware of it. It's really frustrating when it happens, but it's very rare. Don't stress too much. Just don't get upset too much when it happens. All right, so once we clip out of bounds there, we can let go of up, and we're going to tap target. So tapping target there is going to make the camera rotate behind Link as soon as he lands in the water. And so we're gonna keep going. And from here, we have to turn around so that we can get into position to grab the vines. And there's 3 possible frames we can use to do so. This here is the earliest possible frame. It's 2 frames before what we call perfect frame. So this is 2 frames early, this is 1 frame early, and this is the perfect turnaround frame. So we know it's the perfect turnaround frame because it's the 1st frame that we can see this water from out of bounds. And on this frame, we're going to hold down. Holding down is going to make Link start swimming back towards these vines. And we have to let go, and there's a 5 frame window to let go, so it's not super precise. I just look at the 3 hearts at the top left of the screen, and anytime they're back in bounds like this, or even a frame or 2 before this, we can let go. It's not super precise, but just look at those hearts. Once they're in bounds, you let go of the control stick, and you just wait. And if you did this on the perfect turnaround frame, what happens is Link is going to swim up and stop right in the corner. And this is the position we're looking for to do the vine grab after this. So if we turn around on one of the 2 earlier frames, we can still get into this position, so they still work. However, we have to do a backup where we hit C up once Link gets into that corner. Otherwise, what happens is Link will swim back in bounds. So with the first earlier frame, so 1 frame before the perfect turnaround frame, we have 6 frames to hit C up. So again, not super precise. It's really not that difficult, but it is an extra input to remember. If we go 2 frames early, we have only 2 frames to hit C up to stop Link, which makes it actually a lot trickier. So you want to look to either the 1 frame early or the perfect turnaround frame. And if you're pause buffering this, you might as well try to pause buffer to the perfect turnaround frame. Alright, so in full speed, pause buffering to the perfect turnaround frame should look something like this. That's 1 frame early. That's the perfect turnaround frame. So here, we can just simply hold down while we're paused and then just unpause. And we let go, and Link should swim up right into position. We can simply target and get ready for the vine grab later on. Alright, so just to clarify, if we're going to be turning around on one of the earlier frames and we have to do that C up backup, it will look like this. So this is the frame that's 1 frame before the perfect turnaround frame. The way you can tell it's 1 frame early is because this golden Skulltula is going to be super zoomed in and a little bit like out of the frame, like up out of the frame. So if I go 1 frame later, we'll reach the perfect turnaround frame. But if we turn around on this frame, we're going to hold down and we're going to let go of down roughly at the same time, roughly when those 3 hearts are back in bounds. Now Link is going to start swimming towards the corner, but we have to stop him by hitting C up. So we basically wait until he's roughly in that corner. Again, we have 6 frames for it, so it's not super precise. But if we hit C up here, you can sort of see it stops Link in his tracks as this camera is rotating towards first person. So if we're doing the normal vine grab versus quick lock, which I'll get into in a minute, for the rest of the backup, we simply have to hit C up again and then target. And we're good to go. Back into like roughly the same position as the perfect turnaround frame. All right, so if we go 2 frames early, that frame looks like this. We can tell this is 2 frames early because the golden Skulltula is more actually in the frame towards the right of the camera. If we go 1 more frame, the golden Skulltula will go off camera. If we go 2 frames later, we'll hit the perfect turnaround frame. But if we turn around on this frame, this time we only have 4 frames to let go. It's the same visual cue, but we just have 1 less frame to do it. We're gonna let go right around there. And this time we only have 2 frames to hit C up to stop Link. So it's gonna be either, I believe, this frame or this frame. So if we hit C up here, you can see it stops Link again, dead in his tracks. And then again, if we're doing the normal vine grab, we'll hit C up again, and then just tap target. And again, we're in a good position to do the vine grab, similar to the perfect turnaround frame from before. So last thing I wanted to mention was that at this turnaround frame, you can get one of 2 different angles. So one camera angle is like this. It's more zoomed in and kind of like an overhead view right at the corner. The other camera angle, the camera's more zoomed out and you can actually like see Link's face. So visually, again, they look kind of different. But just know that while they look different, the inputs are still the same, and Link is still in the same position. So if you got the perfect turnaround frame, even if it looks different, Link should stop right where he should. And same thing, if you're 1 frame early, you got to do the backup. Same with 2 frames early, you got 2 frames for the C up backup. Just wanted to mention that. Different camera angles, same thing. All right, so next up is the vine grab. So this is the perfect turnaround frame. So I'm going to hold down and then let go right there. And Link will swim up right into position. Once I'm there, I target. And now I have to go over something that happens in game. So when you clip out of bounds, after exactly 10 seconds, the camera's going to lock. And we need the camera to lock in order to do what's called the dive cancel, which is how we get Link into the get item delay state that I was talking about before. So I want you to pay close attention to where Link is in the frame right now. Right now his head is pretty much dead center on the screen. After a few seconds, you're going to notice that the camera's going to pan up a little bit right there. It's pretty subtle. But now if you notice where Link's head is, it's kind of a little bit below the middle of the screen, and the camera's actually bobbing up and down with Link, right? So that moment where the camera pans up a little bit and locks, that's what we're looking for. You know it's locked because if I try to target to change my angle, nothing happens, right? So the next part is to do a dive cancel. I was talking about that before. A dive cancel is done simply by hitting A and C up at the same time. So when you do it correctly, you hear both the dive sound as well as the see up sound at the exact same time. If you hit see up too soon, which is how I fail this most of the time, you just hear the see up sound and you don't hear Link actually diving. And on the other hand, if you hit A too soon, Link will simply dive. So make sure you hit them at the same time, just like that. Alright, so once we've done the dive cancel, the next part of the trick is to get the angle that we need in order to grab these vines. So you're going to notice that once we've done the dive cancel, we can change Link's angle by simply holding right or left on the control stick, and he'll sort of spin on the spot. If our angle is too far to the right, like here for example, when we do the vine grab inputs, what's going to end up happening is that Link is just going to swim back in bounds. And that really sucks, because we end up having to climb all the way back up to the first floor and doing the entire setup all over again. If, on the other hand, we're facing too far to the left, we will still miss the vine grab, but what's going to happen is Link sort of does that like half swim animation, and then we'll resurface immediately. And all we have to do is just do the dive cancel again, and then get a proper angle. So better to err on the side of too far to the left. So the way that I find the angle that we need is by looking at the red texture on the Deku Shield. So it's that, swirl mark, it starts on the left, it goes down, and it curves back down at the top right. So that tail at the top right is what I'm looking for. And what I want to do is I want to line up so that that tail is either barely poking out of the water like this, out of bounds to the left, or being sort of barely covered by the water like that. If you have it poking out too far, like this, you're likely going to swim back in bounds like I was talking about earlier. And if you have it too far covered, like something like this, then again, you'll miss the vine grab as well. So that's what I use as a visual cue. If you want to find your own visual cue, there's an actual range of angles that you can use. And the way that you're going to find these angles is by going into the practice rounds menu, going down to watches there, and then adding these numbers right here as the watch. So once you add those numbers, it's going to give you that angle. That number is Link's angle, his exact angle. And we can use that to get into the position we need in order to do the vine grab. Obviously, we won't be able to do this in runs, but for practicing or learning, it can be pretty helpful. So the range of angles we're looking for is anywhere between 38.98 and 68.32. So it's kind of hard to show. It looks, I guess basically like that. They're very fine increments. So basically here, a little bit more to the left than here. So you can sort of see how far that texture is poking out from out of bounds. Anywhere from there to a little further left than here. So it's much easier to trend further towards the left than to the right if you're using that texture. Any bit that it's poking out of bounds will work, but if it's poking too much out like that, our angle won't be large enough, right? So that's how you can get an angle watch if you want. It can be helpful when you learn things. But obviously in runs, again, we're not going to be able to use that. So I, again, pay attention to that texture on Link's shield. All right, so once we've got the angle that we need, the next part is to notice the way that Link is bobbing in the water here. So if you pay close enough attention, you'll notice that sometimes Link goes deeper into the water than other times. We call these deep cycles versus shallow cycles. In order to grab the vines, we have to grab the vines on the way up before a deep cycle. So the way I notice this is I pay attention to again, the red texture on the Deku Shield. Now, if you pay attention, sometimes it will resurface above the water further than other times. Sometimes it won't even come up above the surface at all. So once I see it resurface by a little bit, like right here, for example, this should work. I'm going to start pause buffering. Now, the frame you're looking for is the frame before the red texture on that shield resurfaces. Most of the time, that will be the first frame that the shield comes up above the water again. Sometimes it'll be the second frame. So if you notice on that first frame it's above the water, it's just like a hair above the water. Maybe try to go one more frame. But this should work. So try to notice, you know, how far his shield is above water here. Right. So on this frame, we're during unpause lag, which is right after those menus go away. Right here, we're going to hit up and A at the same time. If you're not holding target already, be sure to do so, because you have to hold target as well. But on this frame, if we do that, Link should grab the vines. So it's really tricky at first to sort of notice those deep cycles and the shallow cycles and things like that. But I just try to pay as close attention to that red texture on the shield as I can. And normally I'll have pretty good luck with that. All right, so once we've grabbed the vines, if we did the perfect turnaround frame, what we can do is just climb up 2, and then we're gonna go over 6 while holding shield until Link lands on the ledge here. Sometimes if you don't hold shield, he'll miss and land in the water. And if you did one of the earlier turnaround frames, there's a slight backup we have to do on the vines here. All right, so if we did one of the earlier turnaround frames, whether it was 1 frame or 2 frames early, we're gonna go up 1, and then we're gonna climb to the right 6. On that 6th climb, Link is gonna hit this wall a little bit, which will reset his position so that we can go up 1 and over to the right and land on the ledge. If we don't do that, what we call the safety climb, where you go 6 to the right, 1 up and 1 over, it's 1 extra climb to do it this way. If you don't do that on one of the earlier turnaround frames, you're just going to fall in the water, which sucks because you have to do the whole setup all over again. All right, so because of that, sometimes it's best just to do the safety climbs every time, just in case you're not sure whether you got perfect turnaround frame or an early turnaround frame. You know, like sometimes you might just forget in the middle of a run. If you are pause buffering it and you're doing the perfect turnaround frame every time, then you don't have to worry about it. But otherwise, it's best just to do, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 climbs to the right, 1 up, 1 over. One thing I will note about the safety climbs is if you accidentally do 7 to the right, Link will fall in the water, so be careful of that. Alright, so once we land on this platform here, the next step is to kill this Deku Baba so that we can get a Deku Nut. Now, if you're not aware yet, there's 2 different ways we can kill these moving Deku Babas. One of which is if we attack it after it's attacked, like this, it gets stunned and it ends up standing straight up. And if we kill it while it's stunned, we get a Deku Stick, which is not going to work for get item manipulation. We're going to need to get a Deku Nut because we haven't gotten them yet in the game. So, in order to get a Deku Nut, we just have to attack it either before its first attack or after its first attack once it's stood straight up. So to do that, you know, we're going to hold shield, and then we're going to target the Deku Baba, and then just jump slash after it's finished its first attack. So that's going to give us a Deku Nut. We can run and pick it up. Make sure you're moving while you pick up that Deku Nut, because for some reason if you're standing still, the game will soft lock and we're not going to be able to do anything. We'll have to reset at that point. So make sure you're moving as you pick up that Deku Nut. Alright, so a slightly faster way to kill the Deku Baba, if we're trying to save as much time as we can, is to do a shield turn upright and then do a jump slash to kill the Deku Baba before its first attack. So to do a shield turn, we're going to be holding the direction we want to turn in, which again is upright, while we're holding shield. And then we simply let go of shield and hit shield again, and Link will sort of turn on the spot just like that. Now what we're going to be doing in the middle of this shield turn is we're going to hit B before we hit shield again, which will make Link take out his sword without doing a sword slash, which saves us a little bit of time. It also prevents us from cutting this bush, which will sometimes have a heart in it, which screws up our health count, because we have to have a certain amount of health for a later part in the run. So we're going to hold B and then hold shield, hit B, and then hit shield again. And then we're just going to target the Deku Baba and hit A to do a jump slash, which is going to kill it. So in full speed, it's going to look like this. So we're able to kill the Deku Baba before its first attack, which saves us a couple seconds from having to wait for it to attack and then come back up before we can attack again. Now there's two ways we can go about grabbing these vines to climb back up to the map chest. The fastest of which is to simply run down left and jump towards the vines. If you do it this way, it is possible to sort of miss the vines because it can be a little hard to see where you're going. And if you land in the water, you're going to get a Deku-Nut, which will ruin the run, and you're going to have to reset. So you cannot land in the water here. So an easy way to avoid that is you can sort of target and try to do like a side hop, and that actually unlocks the camera. So now we can look at where we're going. This is what I would recommend for like pure beginners, just so that you don't kill the run here, but it loses a good bit of time. So try not to do this if you can. But once you can see where you're going, you're just going to aim towards the vines, run and roll, and he should jump and grab the vines just like that. All right, so one last thing we can do to help us grab the vines here is if we're just going to do the normal like run down left method, is if we target in midair once Link has jumped, the camera is going to face the vines, and then we can just hold up towards the vines and Link should grab them almost every time. So that kind of looks like this. You kind of see, even though I had like a pretty sketchy jump, like it looked like I was about to fall in the water, because I targeted, faced the vines, and then just held up, Link was able to grab the vines. All right, so the last thing I wanted to talk about before we move on from the vine grab is a strat that we call Quick Lock. Now, Quick Lock was found by Torje pretty much accidentally on stream about a year ago when he hit C up to back up turning around too early here. So you have to hit C up to prevent Link from swimming back in bounds. And he stayed in C up mode for longer than usual by accident. And what he found was that the camera locked much sooner than it did normally. So what this means is if we do this setup correctly, we're able to lock the camera sooner than we're supposed to, do the dive cancel sooner than we're supposed to, and grab the vines sooner as well. So this actually saves about 2 seconds or so from doing it normally, and it saves a good bit of time. It's a little bit harder to do it this way, so if you're a beginner, I might just move on to the next part of the tutorial. But if you've done GIM a few times, or if you just want to try it out, because why not, this is how you're going to do it. All right, so what we're going to do, this is the perfect turnaround frame. I'm going to hold down and let go, and once Link reaches the corner, normally we would just tap target and wait for the camera to lock, but for Quick Lock, I'm going to hit C up, just as if I had to hit C up as a backup for turning around too early. So we hit C up, so no matter what turnaround frame you have, you're just going to hit C up once Link reaches the corner. Once we get into first person camera, we're going to start counting the bobs, starting at the bottom. So it's 1, 2, and at the bottom of this third bob right there, we're going to hit up and A at the same time. Hitting A will get us out of first person camera, just as if we had hit C up. A works just as well. And hitting up is going to give Link an angle that's at least relatively close to the angle we need to grab these vines. I've noticed for some reason with the perfect turnaround frame, this angle tends to be too far to the left, like right here. So we're going to have to adjust this angle after the dive cancel. This doesn't happen every time with a perfect turnaround frame, and it seemingly never happens with the earlier turnaround frames. So just be mindful of it. Sometimes you're going to have to adjust his angle. So Link is going to go up. That's Bob 4. It's Bob 5. And once Link's shield is above water here, we're going to hit A and C up to do a dive cancel. This is on the way up after the 5th Bob. So that does a dive cancel. Now, normally we're not going to have to adjust Link's angle, but we will here. I'm just going to adjust Link's angle real quick. And now on the way up on the 6th Bob, we're going to get a working deep cycle. So I can hold target and then hit A and up on this frame, and Link will grab the vines, just like that. All right, so I wanted to mention that for the vine grab, both the 6th Bob as well as the 7th Bob will both work. So this is helpful to know when we get this weird angle here in the perfect turnaround frame. So we wait for the 4th Bob, and on the 5th Bob, we do the dive cancel right there. Now, it gives us a little bit more time to get our angle right. So we could grab there, but if we don't get our angle in time, we can also do this 7th Bob right there. So this is the second possible bob that we can use to grab the vines. So it's often called Bob 2. So That's quick lock. It is very slightly different with the earlier turnaround frames, so I'm going to show you those as well. Alright, so with both of the earlier turnaround frames, this is 1 frame early, we just have to be mindful about how long we're in C-up mode. So we can swim towards the corner here, and we're going to end up reaching this corner sooner than we would with the perfect turnaround frame. And so what that means is when we hit C-up, we're going to start at a different point. We're starting going up before the first bob. So we end up being in C-up mode for longer. So that's bob 1, 2, and the bottom of 3. So I'm actually starting to go up here, so this might be too late. So if we try to get out of C-up mode too late, what might end up happening... Alright, we're good here. But what might end up happening is the camera can lock in first-person camera, and then you're just screwed. It's going to be really hard to grab the vines after that, if not impossible. But with the earlier turnaround frames, we shouldn't have to worry about Link's angle here. This looks pretty good. We shouldn't have to adjust it. So that's the bottom of the 5th bob. On the way up, once Link's shield is above water, we're going to do the dive cancel. And then on the way up on the 6th bob, right there, we can do the vine grab. Just like that. And just last thing I want to mention, just remember with the earlier turnaround frames, we have to do the safety climb, where we do 6 to the right, and then 1 up and 1 over. So just don't forget that. Alright, so once we've killed that Deku Baba, picked up the Deku Nut, and made our way back to these vines, all we have to do now is make our way to the map chest so that we can manipulate our get item value into something else. So before we do that, there's one last trick we have to worry about, and that's what we call the Navi Skip. So as we approach these vines here, once we get close enough, Navi pops up and essentially is just telling us that we can climb vines. But there's actually a way to skip this text box. So the text trigger sort of extends in like a semicircle around the vines here. So it's sort of widest in the middle of the vines and more shallow towards the corners like this. So what we're going to do is as we approach the vines, we want to aim towards the right side here. And once we're close enough, we're simply going to take out a Deku Stick as we're moving forward. So Link is going to be stuck in an animation of pulling the Deku Stick out, followed by immediately putting it away as he climbs the vines. And this is going to make him like too busy to talk to Navi. So it will look like this. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is just take out the Deku Stick at the right time. So to troubleshoot it, if you end up talking to Navi while holding the Deku Stick, that means you tried to pull out the Deku Stick too soon. So next time, just try to pull out the Deku Stick a little bit later. On the other hand, if you end up talking to Navi without holding a Deku Stick, that just means you tried to pull out the Deku Stick too late. So again, you can just take it and sort of adjust for it on your next attempt. Alright, so once you've done the Navi text skip, the last thing we have to do is just simply touch the map chest. So we're going to roll twice to the right up here. And be mindful of these vines up here. There's another Navi text trigger around these vines. And so if you haven't talked to Navi about vines yet, once you get close here, you're going to get a text box. So just be mindful of that. So once you roll twice to the right, aim towards the chest, and you can roll again if you want. And then just make sure you touch the chest, and then jump into the water. Upon resurfacing, get item delay will end, and you're going to receive your glitched item. So Link is holding his hands above his head. He's not holding anything. And the game is telling us we got a compass, which is just not true. So if we pause and look in our inventory, we now have a bottle with blue potion in it. And we're going to be using this bottle for the wrong warp later on in the run. If, on the other hand, you resurface and you get a Deku Nut, what that means is you did not touch the chest on the second floor. You maybe skimmed by it, but you didn't actually touch the front of it. That's a pretty common mistake, and it really sucks. You're going to have to reset. It kind of kills the run, which is pretty unfortunate. If, on the other hand, you resurface and Link isn't holding anything, you don't get any item, that's pretty rare, but what that means is you touched a bush along the way to the chest, and then also did not touch the front of the chest. When you touch a bush, it resets your get item value to 0, so you get nothing. But if you've made it this far, and you've got the bottle with the blue potion in it, congratulations, you've just successfully done get item manipulation. Alright y'all, so that concludes part 2 of the Ocarina of Time GIM route tutorial series. This video was much longer than I originally expected it to be, But regardless, I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. I'll try to answer them as soon as I can. And also definitely think about joining the Ocarina of Time Discord server if you haven't already. It's a huge community of runners who are more than happy to help out, especially if you're a new runner or really if you have any questions at all. I'm going to include a link to that in the description down below as well. In the next video, we will be covering B1 skip in the Deku Tree, as well as the Scrubs fight and the Gohma fight. Should be a bit of a quicker video to make, so expect that out shortly. Until then, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe and all that jazz, and stay tuned for next time. See you guys.